Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and tonight I'm here with my first impressions of the JDS LABS Atom headphone amp. This is made by JDS LABS and they're out of Collinsville, Illinois, which is just on the east side of St. Louis, Missouri, and only about 120 miles from where I live. This amp currently sells for $99 US. For that price, you get both the amp and it comes with a 16-volt AC power supply. It's your basic wall wart type of power supply, but it is pretty much the heaviest and most substantial feeling external power supply that I've seen with an amp. Thing weighs about 16 ounces. So anyway, this amp is 5 inches square, which makes it about 5 inches wide and about 5.5 inches deep, including the volume knob sticking out. It's 1.4 inches tall. Weighs, according to JDS, it weighs 9.3 ounces. According to my scale, it weighs 9.1 ounces, which works out to 258 grams. The power output rated by JDS on this is 1 watt into 32 ohms, 502 milliwatts into 150 ohms, or 125 milliwatts into 600 ohms. JDS claims a signal-to-noise ratio of 114 decibels, crosstalk of less than 87 decibels, and an output impedance of 0.1 ohms, which means this shouldn't be affected by the impedance of the headphones. It shouldn't change the sound of a headphone, whether it's a low or high impedance design. This amp comes with 2 inputs, which are on the back here. You have your RCA inputs for your analog input, and then you also have a second analog input, which is a 3.5 millimeter plug. As far as outputs, it has a preamp out on it, so that's controlled by the volume knob. And then on the back you also have your 16 volt AC input. And then on the front you've got your standard 1/4 inch or 6.3 millimeter headphone jack. You've got a volume knob, which is also a power switch. It clicks when you turn it on, and then you turn it off at the same time. And it also has an LED light behind the knob, which lights up when it's on, so you know that it's on. Then you've got your two-way gain control. In is high gain and out is low gain. And then you've got your input switch, which switches between the RCA ends and your 3.5 millimeter input that's on the back. My first impressions, and I'm going to be honest about this, the first thing that kind of struck me about this is it's lightweight. I mean, this thing weighs like 9 ounces, and I've never felt a headphone amp this light. And you know, I mean, the amp is about half the weight of the AC input transformer, which weighs 16 ounces. So thing's incredibly light. So I mean, I have to admit it, you know, I wasn't all that impressed. It feels kind of cheap to me, and also it's an all plastic design. The entire case is plastic, the knobs are plastic, so it looks kind of cheap too. So, you know, to be honest, I wasn't really expecting that much, but you know, I'm the administrator of the Headphone Experience, and I've seen a lot of conversation about this amp, and people seem to be really impressed by the sound quality of this amp. So, you know, I have been looking forward to giving this a chance and was very anxious to hear it. So, I've had this maybe about 3 days, and I had some other things going on, with work and some family things. So I've only had a chance to listen to this maybe a couple hours, so I'm not going to go real in depth into the sound. I'll do a second video in a couple weeks, a full review when I get time to put some more time into it, and try it with some different headphones and, you know, different music and all that. But basically what I did, and I'll let you know, the test equipment I used was I was using a Cambridge Audio 540C CD player, but as a transport only. I was running that into a Benchmark Media DAC1, and I'm using the output of that into the JDS Atom. And then as far as headphones, I tried a couple of different headphones. The Philips SHP 9500, which is a great $95 or $90 headphone, and, you know, kind of appropriate what you would expect to use with a $99 amp. And then also, to really find out what this amp was capable of, I also used the Kennerton Odin, which is a $2,100 headphone roughly, and I realized that there's probably not going to be anybody using a $99 amp with a $2,100 headphone, but that's an extremely revealing, very detailed headphone, and it's going to tell me what this is capable of, and that's the whole reason I'm here. I want to know what this little amp at $99 is capable of. Excuse me. So basically, my very first thing I noticed about this amp, sound-wise, is that this thing has exceptional clarity and detail. I mean, for a $99 amp, I put this thing up, compared it directly back and forth, and this is using the Kennerton Odin headphone, and I compared this directly with the Benchmark HPA2, which is the amp built into the Benchmark DAC1, DAC2, and DAC3, and at one time that was available as a separate amp, and I believe it sold for $299, so basically a $300 amp. Excuse me. So anyway, that's been kind of my reference amp at that price, and it is known as a very clean, very detailed, very neutral amp. And to be honest, this amp holds its own very well against the Benchmark as far as clarity and detail. I also compared it to the Felix Audio Echo Tube amp, which is an amp I really love, and that amp goes for, I think, about $675 US, so quite a bit more expensive. And this amp, once again, held its own very well. In fact, it might be slightly more detailed. Doesn't have the warmth and the liquid sound of the tube amp, but like I said, as far as clarity and detail, very well holds its own. And I even compared this against my reference amp, which is my Audio GD Master 9, which is about a $1,600 amp with shipping from China, and it's about, probably about 60 times the weight of this at 32 pounds, and probably about 20 times the size of this at 17 by 17 inches by 4 inches tall. And believe it or not, this little amp holds its own very well, once again, in clarity and detail against the Master 9. The second thing I noticed about it, it has a very low noise floor. Any of the headphones I used, some of the more sensitive ones were like the Grotto SR80E, the Kennerton Valley, which are rated at about 100 decibels at 1 milliwatt. I can't hear or pick up any noise floor at all with this amp. So I use my most sensitive headphones, which that's what I use to check the noise floor of amps, which would be the Sony MDR V700, which is about 112 decibels at 1 milliwatt. And if there's a noise floor in an amp, those things are going to pick it up. Well, anyway, with the gain on low, start out with the gain on high. Even with the gain on high, in a completely quiet room, I had to reach about 2 o'clock on the volume knob before I could pick up even the slightest background hiss. And it's far louder than 2 o'clock would be far louder than any normal listening, because I mean those headphones are loud with the amp at 9 o'clock. In fact, too loud to listen to. 8 o'clock would be a more normal listening level. So, and then I tried it with the gain on low, and with the gain on low, I had to go all the way to 5 o'clock on the volume knob, all the way up, and could just barely hear the slightest hiss. So this amp is pretty much going to be dead quiet with any headphone you use. Even the most sensitive IEM should work with this. The next thing I notice is the tone balance seems very neutral. I don't hear any emphasis in the bass, any in the treble, and it doesn't seem to matter. With any headphone I used, you know, with the impedance, didn't seem to change the tone balance at all. Another thing I notice is it seems to have enough power for planar magnetic headphones. I didn't try my most difficult to drive. I didn't like the Hi-Fi Man, Sandara, HE500, and then the most power-hungry headphone I have is the Hi-Fi Man HE560. I haven't had a chance to try any of those yet, but I tried a couple of Kennerton planar headphones, and it seems to have plenty of power, especially on high gain. I mean, I was only listening at maybe 9 to 10 o'clock on the volume knob, so doesn't seem to be short on power. So as far as the sound, like I said, I don't have a whole lot of time, so I'm not going to try to get too deep into it. Give me a couple weeks with this, and I'll dig a little deeper into the sound. The only thing I did know, the only negative I did notice, and I really noticed this compared to the Master 9, but once again, that's a $1,600 amp roughly. Even though this was very, I'd say very clear and very detailed, it did sound slightly dry and lacks a little musicality compared to like the Master 9, and even a little bit next to the Benchmark, and compared to Tube Amp definitely. You know, the Felix Audio definitely sounded you know, warmer and, you know, more musical, and like I said, it's just it sounds slightly dry, but hey, this is a $99 amp, and you know, I mean, to get this kind of clarity and detail and almost dead silence out of a $99 amp is incredible. So basically what it comes down to is this thing holds its own against much more expensive amps as far as clarity, detail, noise floor, and neutrality. So this appears to me to be an outstanding deal for the price of $99. So like I said, give me a couple weeks, I'll dig in deeper and, you know, see what I come up with as far as soundstage and imaging, and you know, imaging I think has a lot more to do with the headphone, but anyway, soundstage width is definitely affected by the amp, and you know, dig in a little deeper, you know, about the sound in pretty much every way. So, and put out a full review. But anyway, that's about it for tonight. I'm going to wrap this up. If this video helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you are all welcome to join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. Thank you.